Vice President Bharrat Jagdeo responds to allegations of early election and Nigel Hughes' conflict of interest. Here is what is had to say.
I saw there are a lot of been talk about elections. Some parties saying that, oh, we have early elections. Don't worry with them. They're just like wasting time. Elections are going to be held towards the end of next year. It's October, November 2025. So all of those who are trying to stir Nigel Hughes, I heard, said, oh, there'll be early elections. It's just like a bunch of nonsense. So every time we go out, they think it's for elections. But we've been going out all the time because that's what we believe in, servicing people. The president has been out there on the road, engaging communities. This is a standard thing. We know, like Granger, you got a cardboard cutout engaging people. We have a different sort of president and cabinet and government. Every day they're out there, they absorb all the heat, we absorb the lies too. Look at the thing. I heard this useless mayor, Obra, just now gone to Kurukururu, where there is a private man with a private land, and he's putting some people off the private land. And suddenly it's a big bad PPP government that is throwing these people off their land. But if you think about vultures, they're only preying on people's misery. They're not going there to help, you know. They will never go there to help. It's a political issue. It's a political issue. You think when they went to Sierra Guyana, which is another situation similar, private, not government, they made it seem as though it is the government throwing the people off, when we are actually helping the people to try to get plots of land elsewhere that they would have never gotten help on. And I gather the transport, the man got his transport for that land in 2019 under the PNC and AFC. And then they opportunistically ran down there to say, look, big bad PVP throwing these people off their land. Not us throwing nobody off their land. So that's what they do all the time. Nothing else. So they think that anyhow, they're probably worried about it. So we've been talking about with various groups, international organizations. The Carter Center was here. I met with them. And I saw a number of parties meeting with them, and I share their views. I saw Timothy Jonas saying that the system is basically transparent. However, there are a couple of things that he advocated for, which is removing dead people from the list, and also that SOPs must be released after the count is done. So I just want to repeat, and we share that view, and because we share the view, that's why we amended the Representation of People Act to make this the law. And so if you don't do it, it's an offense. So under what is being advocated for is part of the law, the amended act, that when the count is done at the polling place and the parties have their SOPs, they have to now upload the statements electronically so the whole country would see this before you start finalizing the tabulation at the regional level and declaring the results at the regional level. So on the night of the election or the next morning, every Guyanese, long before they tabulate GCOM, every citizen should have a copy of every statement of poll, and they can do their own additions and decide who won the elections or not. Every citizen, because they're by law now. It's a news 83B of the Act says that failure to post a copy of a statement of poll or posting of a poll is an offense, right? And it must be, it says, provides for the returning officer and the supernumerary returning officer in the case of a sub-district on receipt of the statement of poll to post an electronic copy of it onto the Commission's website to be publicly viewed. So it's already, I saw Anuk saying that they are advocating for that. That's part of the law already. That's what we went through, all of the things where there could be room for ambiguity or capricious action on the part of the CEO or other staff of GCOM, and we clarify them and we ensure so that they're clear to everyone, and we put in offenses for not doing what you should do, so people can suffer consequences should they depart from a transparent system of elections. And crucial to all of this effort would be the production of a manual now, months before the elections, available to the press, the political parties, and everyone, so you can, long before the elections, see the roles, the duties, obligations, responsibilities, rights of every member who will be part of the conduct of elections, both from the side of the political parties and GCOM. So we will know what the polling agents are entitled to. For example, we've always had disputes that some presiding officers would say, oh, you can't keep the tally sheet, which is their tally sheet. And then another set say, you can keep it. That's the polling agents of the party. It's their right to keep their own tally sheets and stuff. Then we'd have a situation like what happened on the East Coast. You remember APNU was saying, oh, they're missing documents in the box. So what happened in the afternoon now, most of the boxes around the country had all of the requisite documents. In the afternoon, somehow either the CEO or Mingo called maybe about 50 people on the East Coast, presiding officers, and say, you keep those documents and bring them to the commission. Don't put them in the box. So they turned up at the commission building and the RO office with these stacks of paper that we have on videotape, handed them over to GCOM or to the RO, Mingo and the others. Then when the recount took place, then the APNU is saying, oh, those documents are missing. They're not in the boxes like the others around the country because the instruction was changed. Now, in this manual that you will see before the elections, long before the elections, you will see which document has to go into the box and which doesn't have to go. So if the presiding officer now doesn't want to put it into the box, he's creating an offense. So you don't have room for people calling up the last minute and saying, oh, you changed this, that creates confusion subsequently. A lot of that has been clarified in the new law. So we are hoping to have a transparent elections. APNU will continue to make excuses. That's their modus operandi. They will come in, they will make, oh, it's a list, is something else, the Venezuelans that we're bringing here to win the elections, all sorts of things, the usual. They've started at it. There's never been an election in this country that I'm aware of where APNU doesn't make excuses before and after when they lose. And even the excuses were there before 2015, but they didn't say anything about it in 2015. The same list that we're using now, we used in 2015. The exact same list. So I'm not too bothered about APNU, etc. So I saw Exxon through Alistair Rutledge speaking on this matter that has been in the public domain for the past several weeks. And he represents ExxonMobil here in Guyana. And therefore, he's entitled to his views. But if he thinks that his expression that there is no conflict between the two parties or conflict of interest involved here is a view that would prevail with us, he'd better think again. So the obscenity of it is he is a conflicted party. Exxon is a conflicted party itself. So it is like you have a conflict between two parties, and the two parties saying, oh, we're not conflicted. What else do you expect them to say? So it's like they want to judge their own conflict, whether there is a conflict of interest here. And they can't do that. Exxon is a conflicted party too, because they have on their payroll in the country of Guyana the leader of a political party that is represented in the National Assembly, that has a number of seats in the National Assembly, and therefore in a position to have a say on policies. That's their first issue. Secondly, they have a payment stream to this individual. Exxon pays Nigel Hughes ostensibly for legal services, but we don't have in the public record how much they pay him. That figure could easily be inflated for work not done, and may have all the bearings of a legal payment, but it is a political contribution to him and his party to ensure that the interests of ExxonMobil is protected in any future government or even in the National Assembly now. How is this not a conflict of interest? Maybe Exxon has worked this way in other countries in the world. They like to say, oh, we haven't done that in other countries. When we were putting in place the environmental tax that they said, oh, we have never done that elsewhere. And my position was, if you didn't do it elsewhere, doesn't mean that this will not happen in Guyana. In Guyana, you would have to comply with it, because your excuse of not having to comply with a similar arrangement elsewhere doesn't hold any water with us. And we proceeded with putting in place the environmental tax. The same thing happened when we were pursuing the local content law. And that might have been the reason why APNU passed it, because they were very resistant to it. And we said, not because this law, you don't have to comply with a similar law in some of your other jurisdictions. That's an excuse for us not passing the law. And we forged ahead, we passed the law, and they had to comply with it. And today, 1600 Guyanese companies now are benefiting not based on the largesse or the goodwill of ExxonMobil, but by law they have to comply with and present these opportunities only to our people. So I said you will hear more, or ExxonMobil will hear more on this matter from us at the appropriate time and place. Today is not the time and place, but they will hear from us. We believe it's a serious case of conflict of interest. It is paying for influence in policies. And even now, the obscenity of it all. Oh, if I become president, then I will exit this relationship. So he has now to deflect attention from all of this. The AFC has been embarked on a deception. They've deceived the people of this country many times before. They deceived us with that Commingsburg Accord. They deceived the country with the manifesto that they put forward in 2015. Cathy Hughes and many of the others deceived the country, but she deceived when she said to the newspapers and the public, I've left Video Mega from the time I became minister. I've exited the company, and we later found out that she was signing checks on behalf of the country 3 years later, and in her own ministry approving business for the company. And then she signs a check on behalf of the company. This was 3 years after she said publicly, I no longer have any part of this company, I've recused myself, I've exited the company. We've heard this before. So you can imagine why no one would believe Nigel Hughes when he says this. How could you, as leader of a party, not pay attention or talk about oil and gas now in this contemporary context, when that's one of the most topical issues? And you farm it out, you say, here is a 3-persons committee that will talk about oil and gas. And look at the people he put there. It's the recycled people again. We know Patterson, one of the most corrupt individuals here, and that's been demonstrated over and over, and he has to face charges before the court. He talks about moral revival. Shamir Ali, I didn't even know he was convicted or something. I saw a news report. But he is from another era. And his claim to fame was they had put him in Kuwait in the last government as ambassador. He is recycled AFC. And Vince Adams was there, who signed on to, I think it's like the environmental permit, who is a sycophant who presents himself as the great technical person, the conscience of Guyana and the oil and gas industry. And he signed on to this mediocre environmental permit when he had the power to produce a different one or to hold the company to the account. And now I hear them saying some perfunctory words, oh, we may want to renegotiate, we support the government. Prevarication, all sorts of prevarication. All of the prevarication, imagine they were to win and Nigel Hughes becomes the president. You think anything they say now will matter? He will just say, oh, my client's interest, would they may even continue to pay him if he becomes president. We've had one case where a president of Guyana, prime minister of Guyana, was on the payroll of an external spy agency 6 years after he became the prime minister of Guyana. And you know that it's now in the public domain, it's revealed. People don't pay attention to that. Burnham I'm talking about. Go and check the releases that were made from papers in that period, because, you know, under the Secrecy Act, that the term has expired now. So now the source documents are being revealed. He was on the payroll of the CIA for years after he became prime minister. So forgive me if I don't believe Nigel Hughes. The history of his party, the history of his, well, Cathy Hughes herself, don't inspire much confidence in us. And so we believe, and what else? You know, why would you have to lie so blatantly if you didn't have things to hide? He's been trying to sidetrack us away from this issue all the time. Oh, they said Jagdeo was afraid of Nigel Hughes because I held 2 press conferences. I held one press conference last week, and I gave some comments. But trust me, he'll get a lot of attention because I love Nigel Hughes, not because I hate him. He'll get lots more attention from us. 5 press conferences, maybe 10, because we will keep pointing out what he wants to hide. Not because we are afraid of Nigel Hughes. Nigel Hughes was there in the period when we were in opposition. We didn't have any, they had control over everything. And we won the elections then. And we won the elections with Nigel Hughes and his fancy mathematics and everything else. All of them were aligned against us. And what would we be afraid of from this Nigel Hughes, who's been our opponent throughout, who's been lying to the people of this country blatantly throughout his entire political career? He who was not a new person. He was chairman of AFC twice. So who would be afraid of Nigel Hughes? The attention we are giving him is because of the obscenity of their position. We want to point out that AFC is an obscene party. The man says minutes after he was elected, I will put ExxonMobil's interest above that of the national interest. That must be music to the ear of ExxonMobil. Whatever they say about us, they always say we're in Exxon's pocket, etc. That's what they would love to think. But we have strong positions. We defend what we believe is good for Guyana. So if we say we want to increase oil production in this era with climate change, it's because we are convinced that it's good for Guyana, and and our interests coincide with that of ExxonMobil and the others. And that's why we defend it. But they don't have anybody from the government of Guyana on their payroll. We take this conflict of interest issue seriously. There was one current minister who was doing business with ExxonMobil before he became a minister. And I remember 2 days after President Ali was sworn in, he was invited to the office of the president. We were in a meeting, we were looking at the cabinet, naming the cabinet, and the option was put starkly to him. You either stay out the cabinet or you continue, you disassociate yourself if you want to be a minister. And so we take this seriously since then. And that is why we're speaking about it. Because imagine in the National Assembly, when we go with the environmental law and everything else, we don't know what the AFC position is. They'll be coming from their leaders. Don't listen to you. Oh, I recuse myself. The man is a blatant liar. A liar. Can you imagine someone appears at the press conference and says, I do not handle the ExxonMobil portfolio. That is handled by another person in my firm. Clear as daylight. There's no conflict of interest, although that is not in itself excuse because you own part of the company, so the benefits come to you. But he says clearly to the people of this country, I don't handle this portfolio, it's handled by another person. And then, look at this. Eight days before, Nigel Hughes is there on a court case with Raymond Gasket versus Minister of Natural Resources and others. I can play you the recording where Mr. Pollard said he is in association with Nigel Hughes and they're appearing for the added respondents, which are ExxonMobil, Hess, and Sinop. You can listen to the tape yourself. And he denies this like he forgot 8 days before he appeared for ExxonMobil. And he says at the press conference, I don't deal with that portfolio at all. Blatant lie. And how do you get away from that sort of thing? How do you get away from that sort of lie? So when asked about, just to show you a few inconsistencies, he was asked about something about the projects. And he said, oh, this government, he was asked, I think by the Kaichor News, about the feasibility study for projects. And he said, oh, this government is bad. It doesn't do feasibility studies. It was for the gas to energy project, the monetization of the gas, that project that we spoke of here a lot, where Fulcrum was selected as a partner to engage with Exxon and the government of Guyana to see if we have a viable project. So not that we are putting money, obviously didn't read this stuff. So we don't know whether we have a project as yet. The government of Guyana has made it clear we're not putting any money into this project. But we have to explore whether we can develop a viable project now. So that means the feasibility studies, everything else, to see if we can monetize the gas that we have, the associated gas, outside of the gas that's coming to the power plant. So we hired this firm. We're going to look at all the streams of benefit from maybe LNG export, from bringing the gas onshore for electricity or industrial development. All of that would have to be explored before you move to say, we have a project, it's viable, and then we move to get it financed. But it's not financed from the government of Guyana. So obviously he didn't read anything about it. So he chose to make a general comment. He makes general comments like this. Oh yes, government basically has this proclivity, implying that the government has a proclivity for doing this, and naming the Skeldon factory. So, we've taken a lot of heat because of that Skeldon factory, and the same issue came up, and I had to deal with that maybe a couple months ago. First of all, they keep saying there was no feasibility study done by the government. So if you go to Booker Tate website now, I can send you the link, you will see that they said in the year 2000 that the government of Guyana asked them to do a viability, which is a feasibility, and expansion study, and they did it. So we asked, Booker Tate did the feasibility study for us. It's on their website. That was the era when there was a change in the common agricultural policy in Europe, and they were they're trying to get rid of the preferential market that we have for sugar. Remember when they cut their price, the procurement price for sugar, we used to get preferences before. We lost about 40 million US dollars because of lower prices. So they did that. So first of all, there was a study done. Two, we hired as a government, so we hired Booker T to do the study. We hired them to oversee the contract. They had to now look at the Chinese contractor, they assessed the bids when they came in, and to deal with the design and supervision. So they had to approve designs and supervise to see we had a viable project. They did not do their work. So we refused to pay them for some of the supervision work. They went to court. And in 2015 or 2016, I think it was, they got a judgment under APNU against us. And guess who was their lawyer? Nigel Hughes. Nigel Hughes was the lawyer. So he just said here that we didn't do a feasibility study. His client, the Booker T, did the study. And two, he defended them against the government of Guyana when we said they should not be paid. They got a judgment, they got a favorable ruling in court, but they didn't appeal it. Remember, at that time, the Minister of Agriculture was also an AFC member. Imagine the Minister of Agriculture, an AFC member, and fighting against Nigel Hughes, who is the chairman of the party, who is a lawyer for the company. I believe that the reason there was no appeal because we had a strong case and we lost money because of that Skeldon factory. Booker T did not do their work because we are not technical people, we're politicians. We hire the people to supervise the work to see that the factory worked. We lost out on it. So how could you believe such a person? And by the way, if he believes that the gas to energy project is not a good one, that means his client, Exxon, is funding part of the pipeline or part of the pipeline, a project that may not be feasible. Did he say that to his client when he gave them the advice? It's just all very conflated. And so you will see an attempt by Nigel Hughes to talk about everything under the sun except this obscene conflict of interest where he wants to put money above national interest, the opportunism. He doesn't want that. He wants this to go away. So he's going to comment on Sarah Joanna, on mathematics, CXC mathematics, although I don't think he would pass if 33, he thinks that 34 is the majority of 65. He would comment on everything under the sun. And his fake committee will, the oil and gas committee will come up with all kinds of positions to create this facade, this air, we are taking a strong national interest. Just our leader can't speak on it. Imagine that. and so they're masterful at trickery and sidetracking people. And he'll get the sycophants jumping in. Anand Gulsaran, the conscience of the country, although he himself was conflicted in the past when he got AFC, the APNU win the elections, and he got a contract without bidding and illegally awarded because under the law that he's so proud of when he was Auditor General, it says that any contract for the audit of public accounts have to either be approved by the Auditor General or the Public Accounts Committee of the Parliament, not by the minister. He got a contract from the minister to do audit, illegally so. Now, he jumped in now. Oh, you're going to see all the fossils weighing in. GHK, Lal, and everybody. They're crying. This is... Anyhow, let me just leave it like crying. It's very amusing when I read what they're writing. Of course, I get the brunt of the cussing, which is normal, but they're disappointed. They shouldn't be disappointed. They should know that's the nature of the creature that we're dealing with. It has happened many times before. I'm not even going to deal. I'm saving. More must come. Better will come to later, when we have a ton of other things that we'll talk about. But I just wanted to deal with this conflict of interest issue here.
Thank you for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments section. Look out for more broadcasts soon, and please subscribe.